The knock wasn't loud. It was the kind of knock that means somebody doesn't want the neighbors to hear your life fall apart. I was rinsing a coffee mug when the knock hit. 2 quick taps. Then a pause like whoever it was had to convince themselves to do it again. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked to the door. Through the frosted glass, I caught a shape shifting its weight. When I opened it, Madison Brooks stood on my porch like she'd been pushed there by a storm. Her face was drained. Eyes red, not from crying hard, crying quiet. The kind you do in a bathroom with the faucet running. Madison. My voice came out normal. I hated that it did. Is Derek okay? She flinched at his name. That was the first punch. I need to come in, she said. No hello. No buffer. Just urgency wrapped in shaking hands. I can't do this outside. I stepped back and she moved past me like the house wasn't mine. Like the air inside was the only place she could breathe. She stood in the entryway, staring at the family photos on the wall. Sophie and me at the lake, Derek and Madison at that stupid charity gala. All of us together smiling like we'd solved life. Madison swallowed. Her throat bobbed like it hurt. What happened? I asked. She turned toward me and I saw it. Fear, yes, but also resolve. A decision already made. I found something, she said. And if I don't show you right now, I'm going to lose my nerve. My stomach tightened. Instinct trying to name the threat before my mind could. Accident. Illness. Police. Instead, she said, it's about Sophie. The room got smaller. Not in a dramatic way, just in the way your body knows it's about to be hit and braces without permission. Sophie, I repeated like the word might change if I said it again. What about her? Madison pulled her phone out with both hands. Her fingers were unsteady, but her grip was firm, like she was holding a weapon she didn't want to use. Blake, she said, and my name sounded like an apology. I didn't want to believe it either. I took a slow breath through my nose. I felt my pulse behind my eyes. My brain tried to reach for an explanation that didn't cut. Madison, I said, you're scaring the hell out of me. She nodded once, sharp and bitter. Good, because you need to be awake for this. She unlocked her phone, then hesitated, just a fraction of a second, before looking me dead in the face. It's Derek, she said. It's Derek and Sophie. The silence after that didn't feel empty. It felt loaded, like the whole house was holding its breath, waiting to see what kind of man I'd be when the illusions finally collapsed. Madison extended the phone toward me. Let me show you, she said, and I reached out and took it, even though every part of me already knew my life was about to split in two. Madison sat on the edge of my couch like she didn't trust the cushions to hold her. I stood. I didn't want to sit. Sitting felt like surrender. On her phone was a folder. Plain name, nothing dramatic. Just a date range. You sure? I asked, even though the question was useless. No, she said. But yes. She tapped. The first image loaded and my throat went dry. Sophie and Derek in a hotel hallway. Too close, too casual. His hand at the small of her back like it belonged there. Not a hug. Not a friendly lean. Ownership. My mind tried to argue with my eyes. That could be. Then Madison swiped and the argument died. Another photo. Their faces angled toward each other, smiling like teenagers. A timestamp in the corner. A location tag. It wasn't one moment caught wrong. It was a pattern. Madison opened chat logs next. Derek's name at the top. Sophie's replies underneath. No flirting that could be brushed off as jokes. No you're crazy emojis that meant nothing. It was direct, familiar, routine, two people living a second life in plain text. I felt heat in my chest, but my hands stayed steady. That surprised me. My body was calm the way it gets calm right before impact. Madison scrolled to something labeled receipts. Hotel confirmations. 2 names. 2 credit cards. Same places, different weekends. Notes in the margins. Dates Madison had cross-checked with work trips, late meetings, girls' nights. My wedding ring felt heavier with every swipe. You didn't just find this, I said. She shook her head, eyes shining but hard. I suspected. I checked. I hated myself for checking. And then I hated them more for being right. She opened a video file and paused with her thumb hovering over play. This one, you don't have to. I do, I said. My voice didn't crack. Came out low and flat. Play it. She hit play. It wasn't graphic. It didn't need to be. Derek's laugh in a hotel room, his laugh, the one I'd heard over beers and football. Sophie's voice, soft and close, saying his name like it was normal. The camera shook for a second and caught their reflections in the mirror. Bare shoulders, tangled movement, the kind of intimacy that doesn't belong to friends. My vision narrowed. I felt the blood in my ears. The room didn't spin. It sharpened. I handed the phone back like it burned. How long? I asked. Madison exhaled through her nose, like she'd been holding that breath for weeks. Months, she said. Maybe longer. I can't prove that before. I stared at the wall behind her, at a photo of Sophie and me on vacation. I remembered the day, sun, laughter, her head on my shoulder. My brain replayed it and rewrote it at the same time, like someone dragging a razor through film. Everything that used to feel solid started to hollow out. Madison's voice cut through it. Blake, I'm sorry. I looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't here to watch me break. She was here because she'd already broken and refused to stay alone inside it. I nodded once. Okay, I said. It didn't mean I was okay. It meant I understood the rules had changed. And from that moment on, I stopped asking myself if it was real. I started asking myself what I was going to do about it. Sophie got home at 7:18 like she always did on Tuesdays. I knew because I'd watched the clock like it owed me money. The garage door groaned. Her heels clicked across the tile. Keys hit the bowl by the entryway, our little ritual, the sound that used to mean home. Hey, she called out, light and easy. Have you eaten yet? I stood in the kitchen with a clean counter and a dead stomach. Madison had left an hour earlier, eyes still red but spine straight. She'd hugged me once, brief, awkward, necessary, and walked out like she was stepping into a war. Sophie walked in and smiled like nothing was rotting under our floorboards. She leaned in to kiss my cheek. I moved half a step back. Not dramatic, just enough. Her smile faltered. What's wrong? I looked at her face and it was like looking at a stranger wearing my wife's features. Same eyes, same mouth, different person. I need space, I said. She blinked, confused, then offended, like I'd broken a rule she didn't remember agreeing to. Space? From what? From everything, I said. I kept my tone calm, controlled. I'm not in a good headspace tonight. That was the truth, just not the whole truth. The whole truth was sitting in my head like a loaded pistol. I wasn't going to fire it in my own kitchen. Sophie set her purse down slowly. Did I do something? I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. No, I said, and let the lie hang there between us. Just give me tonight. She studied me, searching for a crack she could pry open. When she didn't find one, she adjusted. Sophie was good at adjusting. That's what made her dangerous. Okay, she said softly, like she was the patient one. I'll give you space. She walked upstairs, and every step sounded like theft. Across town, Madison was doing the same thing in a different house. Derek came in loud, whistling, talking about traffic, tossing his jacket over a chair like the world was his. Madison stood by the sink, hands in soapy water, expression blank. He kissed her temple. Long day, Emma, she said. He didn't notice the cold, or he did and didn't care. He poured himself a drink, normal as ever, and talked to her about nothing. 2 houses, 2 liars, 2 people pretending the air wasn't poisoned. And in both places, the silence was doing more damage than any screaming ever could. Madison texted first. Not a paragraph, not a breakdown, just a simple line that felt like someone turning a light on in a room you didn't realize you'd been locked inside. Madison, you holding up? I stared at it longer than I should have. My thumbs hovered, useless for a second, like they didn't recognize the world anymore. Me, still standing. You? A pause. 3 dots. Then, Madison, same. Haven't slept. Keep hearing him walk around like nothing happened. I read it twice, not because it was deep, because it was true. The next few days became a quiet rhythm. Short check-ins, hard facts, no dramatics. When you're betrayed, your brain tries to sprint in circles. Her messages didn't let me. They kept me pointed forward. Thursday afternoon, Sophie texted she'd be working late. Same wording as always. Same casual certainty. 5 minutes later, Madison sent, "He's at the office." I felt something inside me settle. Not peace, just confirmation. Like a judge stamping a file closed. Me, coffee? Madison. Where? We picked a small place off the main road, neutral ground. No mutual friends. No chance of encounters. I got there early and chose a table with my back to the wall, facing the door. An old habit from a life that used to be simpler. Madison walked in wearing a hoodie and tired eyes. She looked around like she expected to be followed, then spotted me and relaxed by half a degree. She sat down, didn't smile, didn't apologize for existing. "Thanks for coming," she said. "I didn't come for thanks," I replied. That earned a small nod. Respect, more than comfort. We talked about logistics first. Money, calendars, patterns. When you strip emotion away, cheating is just a schedule. Then the conversation shifted without effort. What we'd ignored in our marriages. The little red flags we'd laughed off. How loyalty turns into a blindfold if you're not careful. "I feel stupid," Madison admitted, staring into her cup. I shook my head once. "No, they're stupid. We trusted each other. That's not the crime." She looked up at me then, and there it was, recognition. Not attraction. Not anything soft. Just the relief of being understood without having to explain every detail. Outside, the sky went dark early. 2 people somewhere else were lying again. And for the first time since the knock at my door, I didn't feel alone in it. I told Sophie it was a simple pizza night. A reset. Friends, laughs, normal life. She liked the sound of normal. It gave her something to hide behind. Derek showed up 10 minutes after her, carrying a 6-pack like he owned my house. He clapped my shoulder at the door. "Carter," he said, grinning wide. "I need this." I looked at him and felt nothing warm. Just a clean, quiet certainty. The kind you get when you've already buried something and you're just waiting for the ground to settle. Madison arrived last. She met my eyes for half a second, enough to confirm we were aligned, then stepped inside with the calm of someone done being played. The living room filled up fast. 2 other couples. A buddy from work. Laughter bounced off the walls. Someone argued about a game on TV. Pizza boxes stacked on the counter. Sophie moved through it like the perfect wife, touching my arm, smiling at my friends, acting like her hands weren't dirty. Derek was even worse. Storytelling, joking, playing the loyal best friend so hard it was almost impressive. Almost. I waited until everyone had a drink. Until the mood was settled. Until nobody was looking for the exit. Then I stood and turned the TV off. The room quieted in that slow, confused way. "What's up?" one of the guys asked, half laughing. I picked up the remote again and kept my voice steady. "I've got something to show everyone." Sophie's smile tightened. "Blake, what is this?" Madison didn't move. Derek shifted his weight like his body knew before his brain did. I didn't look at Sophie yet. I looked around the room, at people who'd toasted our marriages, who'd watched us build lives. People who deserved the truth because they were going to be dragged into the fallout either way. "I'm not doing rumors," I said. "I'm not making private excuses. I'm doing facts." I clicked. The first photo hit the screen, Sophie and Derek in that hotel hallway. Large, bright, impossible to misunderstand. Someone made a sound like they'd been punched. Another person whispered, "No way." Sophie stood up so fast her knees hit the coffee table. "What the hell is that?" Derek's face went pale, then hard. He tried to laugh. Came out wrong. "Blake, come on." I clicked again. Chat logs. Derek's name. Sophie's messages underneath. A timeline down the side. The room turned on them in real time. You could feel it. The air changing, the respect draining out like water through a crack. Sophie's voice went sharp. This is insane. You're humiliating me. You humiliated yourself, Madison said quietly from the couch. Head snapped toward her. Sophie stared like she just noticed Madison was in the room. Madison didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. I found it. I verified it. He didn't even try to hide. Derek took a step toward the TV like he could physically block it. Turn it off. I didn't move. Sit down. He froze. Not because I was bigger, because the room wasn't his anymore. The control he'd been borrowing was gone. I clicked again, receipts, dates, names, places. Sophie started crying, but it was the wrong kind. Not grief, no remorse, panic. The kind that shows up when the mask slips in front of people who used to believe you. One of our friends stood up with disgust on his face. Derek, you're kidding me. Derek looked around, searching for an ally. Nobody moved. Sophie tried the oldest move in the book, turn it into a fight about tone. Blake, we can talk about this privately. I walked to the kitchen island, picked up 2 envelopes and came back. I dropped one in front of Sophie, then one in front of Derek. Divorce papers. Clean. Prepared. Not a threat, an outcome. You've had months, I said. You don't get more minutes. Sophie stared at the papers like they were written in another language. Derek's jaw clenched, anger rising now that his shame had an audience. This is a setup, he snapped. Madison stood for the first time that night. Calm. Controlled. Done. No. This is the end. The room was silent again, but it wasn't tense now. It was final. Sophie looked at me. Really looked. Like she was trying to find the man who would soften, the man she could talk down to. She didn't find him. I nodded toward the door. Leave. Derek opened his mouth. Thought better of it. Sophie's hands shook as she grabbed her purse. Tears fell, but her eyes stayed sharp, still calculating. They walked out under the weight of every stare in that room. The door closed behind them, and for the first time since Madison's knock, the air in my house felt clean. Weeks don't heal you. They just give you enough time to stop bleeding in public. Sophie moved out 3 days after pizza night. She didn't pack like a wife leaving. She packed like someone evacuating before the fire reached the next room. Fast, quiet, avoiding eye contact like it was evidence. Derek's place became her landing pad. Of course it did. A mutual friend texted me later. They're together now, posting like it's real. I didn't look. I didn't need to. I knew the shape of it. 2 people trying to turn theft into a home. Trying to convince themselves the wreckage was worth it. Madison heard the same things on her end. We didn't gossip. We traded facts the way you do when you're rebuilding a life. Clean, useful information. Divorce is less drama than people think. It's paperwork, meetings, signatures, your old promises reduced to fonts and deadlines. Sophie tried to talk during mediation. No apologies. Not accountability. Strategy. I think we can keep this amicable, she said, voice soft like she was doing me a favor. I looked at the mediator. I want clean terms. I want it done. Sophie's eyes flashed. Blake. No, I said, still calm. You don't get to steer anymore. Derek didn't show up to his first meeting. Send a lawyer. Typical. He always preferred control from a distance. Madison was different. She showed up to every appointment, every call, every hard conversation. Not because it was easy, because it was necessary. Watching her handle it did something in me. It reminded me what strength looked like without ego. We kept checking in. Sometimes it was texts. Sometimes it was a short coffee. No big speeches. Just 2 people refusing to drown alone. One night I stood in my kitchen, staring at the space where Sophie's things used to be. Empty shelves, clean counters, silence that didn't accuse me anymore. Madison called. You okay? She asked. I'm clear, I said. That was the closest word. The fog was gone. The denial was gone. It hurt, but it wasn't confusing anymore. Same, she said. It's weird. I miss who I thought he was, not who he is. I understood that too well. Yeah. We finalized the divorces within days of each other. There wasn't triumph. There wasn't a celebration. There was relief, the quiet kind. The kind you feel when you lock a door for the last time and realize you don't have to keep checking behind you. Sophie and Derek had each other. But having isn't the same as building. Everyone could see the difference. Madison and I didn't talk about the future like it was a romance. We talked about it like survivors. One step, one honest day, then another. And slowly, without anyone forcing it, the echoes got quieter. I didn't hear it from Sophie. I heard it the way you always hear things when a life burns, through other people's uncomfortable whispers. Madison texted me one afternoon, "You're not going to believe this." I was at my desk. I stared at the message, then typed back, "Try me." A minute later, a pregnant girl showed up at their place. "Gym employee," says Derek's father. I read it twice. No satisfaction hit me, just a cold, familiar recognition, like seeing a wreck you barely survived and realizing someone else just hit the same wall at full speed. That night, the story filled in through mutual friends who couldn't help themselves. It happened on a Saturday. Sophie and Derek were home. New place, new furniture, new photos trying to pretend the old ones didn't matter. The knock came hard, no hesitation, no politeness. Derek opened the door and found a young woman standing there with a swollen belly and a phone in her hand. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She looked tired in a way that didn't come from lack of sleep. It came from being lied to for months. Sophie came into the entryway behind him, already irritated, already ready to defend her new reality. "Can I help you?" Sophie asked. The girl didn't look at Sophie at first. She looked straight at Derek. "You said you'd handle it," she told him. "You stopped answering me." Derek's face changed. Not confusion, calculation. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, fast. The girl raised her phone. "You do." She turned the screen toward Sophie. Messages, dates, his name, his words. Sophie's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her eyes ran over the screen like they were trying to reject it. Derek went on the offensive classic. "This is crazy. She's trying to." The girl cut him off. "Don't." One word. Flat. Final. "I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here because you promised you wouldn't make me do this alone." Sophie finally found her voice, thin and sharp. "How long?" Derek didn't answer. His silence did it for him. The girl looked at Sophie then, really looked, and something shifted in her expression. Not pity, not kindness, just a hard truth passing between two women who'd been sold the same lie with different packaging. "He told me you two were complicated," the girl said. "He said he was trapped." Sophie flinched like she'd been slapped, because she'd used the same excuse once, because she'd believed it sounded better than I wanted him. Derek tried to step closer to Sophie, hands up like he could calm her. "Soph, listen." She backed away. Her eyes were wet, but her face was blank, stunned beyond emotion. "You did it to me," she whispered, not as a question, as a verdict. Derek's jaw clenched. "You don't get to play victim." Sophie laughed once, small, broken. "I'm not playing." She looked at the girl's belly again, then at Derek like he was finally what he'd always been. "I can't believe I destroyed my life for you." She didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She didn't need to. She walked past him, grabbed her keys, and left him standing in the doorway with his denial collapsing around his ankles. Later, someone said Derek followed her to the driveway, calling her name like it still meant something. She didn't turn back, and the mirror finally cracked the rest of the way. Derek tried to outrun it, first with denial, then with anger, then with silence. None of it worked. The gym employee didn't disappear. She didn't cool off. She didn't get scared by his lawyer's letters. She showed up with timelines, screenshots, and the kind of resolve that comes when you're done being treated like a secret. Mutual friends stopped taking his calls. The guys who used to slap his back at barbecues left him on red. Not out of loyalty to me, out of disgust for him. There's a difference. Loyalty is a bond. Disgust is a verdict. He was forced into responsibility the same way some men are forced into adulthood, by paperwork and consequences. And then there was Sophie. She didn't come running back to anyone. Not to me. Not to Madison. Not even to the people who would have let her cry and pretend she'd learned. She stayed alone. A friend ran into her at a grocery store and said she looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but like she'd lost the armor she used to wear. No ring. No Derek. No confidence borrowed from attention. She stood in an aisle staring at pasta like it was a difficult decision. Like she wasn't just choosing dinner. She was choosing what kind of person she'd be when nobody was watching. Derek, meanwhile, sat in the wreckage of his own ego, learning the hard way that control isn't power if you don't have respect. And Sophie finally had what she'd never wanted. A quiet life where the only voice left to argue with was her own. A year doesn't fix you, teaches you what you can live without. Blake and Madison didn't build their life on revenge. Revenge was the spark, sure, but sparks die fast. What stayed was the boring, daily proof that honesty is a muscle you either train or lose. First, they kept it simple. Coffee after work. A walk when the day felt too loud. Short texts that weren't emergency flares anymore. Just someone checking in because they wanted to, not because they had to. Madison would show up in a hoodie and tired eyes, and Blake would notice the way she carried herself now. Less apologetic, more precise. He respected that. Respect was the new foundation. Not charm, not chemistry, respect. They didn't pretend the past was over. They just stopped letting it run the schedule. Some nights, Madison would sit at his kitchen table and pay bills while Blake cooked. No music, no fake cheer. Just two people sharing space without performing. That kind of quiet used to scare him. Now it felt like a signal, nothing to hide. He noticed changes in himself too. He slept better, ate better. Not because life got easy, because his brain wasn't constantly translating lies anymore. He didn't have to read the tone or decode excuses. Madison said what she meant. If she was upset, she said it. If she needed space, she asked. No traps. No games. When the idea of living together came up, it wasn't a movie moment. It was practical. Madison's lease was ending. Blake's house was too quiet. They sat on the couch with a notebook between them and talked like adults. Finances, boundaries, what they needed to feel safe. They didn't rush past the hard parts. They dragged them into the light and dealt with them. The day she moved in, there were boxes stacked in the hall and a dull ache in Blake's chest that surprised him. Not regret. Just the weight of knowing how much he'd lost to get here. Madison caught him staring at the empty wall where Sophie's photo used to hang. You okay? She asked. Blake nodded once. Yeah, just seeing it. Madison didn't lecture. She didn't try to turn it into a pep talk. She just said, we don't have to pretend it didn't hurt. That was the difference. Sophie would have needed him to move on for her comfort. Madison let the truth exist without making it about her. Weeks passed. Madison's mug appeared in the sink. Her keys landed in the bowl by the door. A second toothbrush sat in the bathroom without feeling like a betrayal of his own history. It wasn't romantic. It was real life, steady, unglamorous, reliable. One night, they sat at the table after dinner, the house quiet in a clean way. Madison looked at him like the thought had been building for a while. Do you ever think it had to happen? She asked. Blake didn't answer fast. He thought about the knock, the evidence, the exposure. He thought about the man he'd been, comfortable, trusting, asleep at the wheel. No, he said finally. It didn't have to happen. He met her eyes. But it did. And we didn't let it turn us into them. Madison nodded, slow. Good. Blake leaned back in his chair and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not excitement. Not adrenaline. Peace earned. Not gifted.
Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story makes this one look like a fairy tale.